A few days ago, the first trailer for the Harry Potter HBO TV show came out, and I was thinking about talking about it in a video, but there's aspects to the trailer and to the TV show that I'm a bit skeptical about, not so sure about. And since then, Harry Potter's been on my mind a little bit. And just today, I figured instead of doing a video talking about why I'm skeptical of the new Harry Potter, why not do a video talking about my love of the old Harry Potter, i.e., the film series? You know, when people say they grew up watching Star Wars? Well, Harry Potter was my Star Wars. I was literally a kid growing up watching those films and growing up alongside the characters on screen. So I have quite an attachment to this series of films and to this film universe. So it's actually quite surprising that after all these years, I've never once done a video talking about the Harry Potter films. So yeah, this is my ranking of the Harry Potter films from my favourite to least favourite. And just so you know, the Fantastic Beasts films will not be part of this ranking because they just do not exist. So yeah, let's get to it. Starting off at number 8, my least favourite Harry Potter film, quite easily actually, is The Half-Blood Prince. Now to be clear, I don't dislike The Half-Blood Prince. I think there's a lot of quality aspects to it. Draco Malfoy is given such an interesting storyline in here. They really deepen that character so much, and Tom Felton gives the best performance he's ever given as Draco Malfoy. And the last half an hour of the film with Harry and Dumbledore going to the cave and the entire climax at the Astronomy Tower, which, spoiler alert, you know, you just know. Dumbledore's death, Snape, all that is amazing, fantastic. But the thing that bogs this film down for me is the overemphasis on all the classroom humour and the romances. Ron and Lavender Brown, personally, not a fan of the Lavender Brown character. And I just feel like the film emphasises that part of the story a little bit more than the Tom Riddle backstory, the Draco Malfoy storyline, and it just takes precedence over the most interesting aspects of the Half-Blood Prince storyline, to me at least. And I personally have never read the Harry Potter books, and that's the number one complaint I always see the book purists give to Half-Blood Prince, is that all the cool Tom Riddle backstory was omitted from the film version. All the stuff about his dad, Marvolo Gaunt, that I've read about in the lore on the internet, completely not even in the film whatsoever. So yeah, Half-Blood Prince is easily my least favourite Harry Potter film. It's the only Harry Potter film I don't at least really like. But again, there's still a lot of really good aspects to it. I can't call it a bad film. That last half an hour is tremendous. If the entire film was as good as that last half an hour, this would rank probably in the top 4. Coming in at number 7 is in fact the 7th film in the franchise, and that's Deathly Hallows Part 1. Deathly Hallows Part 1 does suffer from a lot of the usual transgressions of Part 1 films, in that it doesn't really feel like a complete film to itself. There's not really a beginning, middle, and end. It does feel like half of a story. But I feel like it's still a lot better than most Part 1 films because it still covers a lot of its own story in the meantime. Like, Deathly Hallows as a whole, I think about Part 1 and 2 together and the entire storyline, and I don't know how they would have crunched that into one singular film that wasn't 3.5 or 4 hours long. So splitting the films in 2 halves was a worthwhile decision ultimately. It's just Part 1 is a film I'm never really gonna watch it on its own. You know, on a random Wednesday, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put in Deathly Hallows Part 1 and then just continue on with my day. If you're watching Part 1, you're watching Part 2 straight afterwards as a double feature. That's the only thing that really holds Part 1 back for me. Otherwise, it's a quality film, and again, it still covers a good amount of story, and there's some great beats in there. Dobby's death still hits as one of the most saddest deaths in the entire franchise. I like the feeling of hopelessness in their whole quest. They're out there on their own and they're just trying to get it done. It does mean that we don't get a lot of screen time with some of the favourite side characters, but seeing Harry, Ron and Hermione on their own outside of school trying to accomplish this impossible task does give it that endgame feeling that you need in the finale of a franchise or the penultimate film in a franchise. And the whole Malfoy Manor segment is really good as well. And I personally really like the scene where Harry and Hermione have that dance in the tent. It's a really good kind of relief from the darkness, and it just illustrates trying to find happiness and joy in dark times where you possibly can. I think that means more now than it ever has done in today's day and age. Number 6, Chamber of Secrets. Each Harry Potter film is darker than the previous one, and Chamber of Secrets kickstarted that trend, not completely overboard with darkness, but the story is taken a little bit more seriously because of the story at hand, with students getting petrified, a monster basilisk on the loose in the school. And it was the first Harry Potter film where you truly felt the stakes because The petrifications, if that's a word, keep getting worse and worse. And there's the threat of the school being closed. Dumbledore's gone off somewhere. Hagrid's been taken away because he's being blamed for all the petrifyings because they think it's Aragog, his big spider in the Forbidden Forest. And the tone and the atmosphere when they're down there in the Chamber of Secrets has a slightly more epic feel to it over the Philosopher's Stone, and it just contributes to what I was saying about the stakes of the story. It just feels a little bit more next level, and that's what sequels in general just need, and Chamber of Secrets absolutely has it. By the way, check out my Lego Flying Ford Anglia. Pretty cool. Coming in at number 5, The Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone, all these years later, is still such a fun film to watch because it's our introduction to this world. And we're experiencing the wizarding world for the first time vicariously through Harry Potter. And seeing all this wonderful magic of this universe for the very first time, Diagon Alley, Gringotts Bank, and Hogwarts itself. I know it's cheesy and I know it's kind of cringy, but it is magical. It's a magical experience to watch this film still all these years later. That first shot of Hogwarts Castle when they're rowing in the boats with that John Williams score, it's just one of the most iconic scenes and moments in film history. The first half of Philosopher's Stone is pretty much introducing us to the core characters and also establishing the universe, spending time in the universe, and then the second half introduces the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone, and they're being suspicious of Snape, and that's where the fun mystery comes into it. I do love the slightly more playful, whimsical feeling of Philosopher's Stone, again because it's our first introduction to this world, and here's our first adventure in this wizarding world. And the whole climax when they go down into the dungeons and there's the giant chess game and the confrontation with Quirrell, it's just awesome. And it's just a flavour of even more epic to come in the later films. And some of that epic is experienced in the film that I'm putting at number 4, and that's The Order of the Phoenix. Order of the Phoenix presents a slightly different genre. I mean, it's still fantasy, obviously. But I love how the first half, maybe first 2/3, is kind of a political conspiracy film because Voldemort's come back and the Ministry of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, they're trying to bury that truth, smearing Harry Potter's name, discrediting Dumbledore. That on its own was really intriguing. And then you get to Umbridge becoming the new headmistress and just further trying to bury the truth, taking over Hogwarts, trying to control the narrative. The tagline on the posters for this film was "The Rebellion Begins." And it's a good rebellion film because you have Harry stepping up to train his friends and fellow students for the forthcoming battle in the Room of Requirement, which is just badass to watch him evolve as a character like that. And then you get to the climax, the Battle of the Ministry of Magic, and that's the epic I was just referring to. Not only is the set design and production design for the Ministry of Magic absolutely incredible, but the battle that goes down in there with the Death Eaters versus Harry and his friends and the death of Sirius Black, very sad, quite effective. But then the showdown between Dumbledore and Voldemort, and again, epic. There's no other word for it. Order of the Phoenix is often deemed the most underrated Harry Potter film, but I've seen that opinion so much that I no longer consider it underrated because all I ever see people say is how good or great The Order of the Phoenix is, and I'm of the opinion that it's great, but it's my number 4. There's still 3 more ahead of it. Coming in at number 3 is the film that 10 or so years ago would have been my number 1, but it's now my number 3, and that's the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Now, Deathly Hallows Part 2 is, in my opinion, one of the most fulfilling conclusions to a franchise ever made. It brings the story and the characters to such a satisfying and suitably epic conclusion. The Battle of Hogwarts is just incredibly well realised. It's epic. The music that goes along with it by Alexander Desplat is amazing. The final battle between Harry and Voldemort, and just the story itself as well, going after the Horcruxes in Hogwarts during the battle. Like I said, it's epic in all the right ways it should be, and it's emotional as well. The flashback with Snape and Dumbledore, and finally figuring out Snape's loyalties. Snape, by the way, I've not mentioned it, is my favourite character in the entire franchise. His complexity, his depth, just the whole mystique and the aura surrounding Snape, Alan Rickman's performance, easily my favourite character in the entire franchise, and Deathly Hallows Part 2 cements that 1000%, always. The only nitpick that I have about Deathly Hallows Part 2 is that there are some parts that feel slightly rushed. Without credits, the film is like an hour and 50 minutes long, and I would not have minded certain sequences and moments to have been expanded a little bit more just to amplify the epicness of it. I will never forget watching Deathly Hallows Part 2 in the cinema, opening night, July 15th, I think it was, 2011, and It was like a major, well, no, it was a major part of my childhood coming to an end. And it's just one of those cinema experiences I will never ever forget, despite being sat on the very, very front row because there were no other seats left. It was packed. When talking about satisfying conclusions to a franchise, Deathly Hallows Part 2 has to be up there amongst one of the very, very best. Coming in at number 2 is, in my opinion, the most underrated Harry Potter film, The Goblet of Fire. Goblet of Fire was the first Harry Potter film that I saw in the cinema. I was already hooked on the franchise by watching the first 3 films at home. Goblet of Fire was the first one I saw on the big screen, and I remember it very, very well. 2005 was just a really pivotal year in my childhood for multiple different reasons in terms of entertainment, and Goblet of Fire was probably the pinnacle of entertainment of that year for me, and definitely of my childhood as a whole. Goblet of Fire was another big tonal change for the franchise. It didn't feel like the last 3 films, and I just particularly love the dark tone of Goblet of Fire. I love how it was shot, the cinematography in here, the dark colours were really fitting to the story, and it was edging closer and closer to the darkest era of the Harry Potter films, with Voldemort's return at the very end, obviously. The Triwizard Tournament, thrilling, and the tone and atmosphere of the second task in the Black Lake and the third task in the maze is incredible. The second task, especially when they go into the Black Lake, the Mer People songs echoing throughout the water, it gives me chills when I think about that Mer People song. It's just unbelievably atmospheric in that really dark, enthralling kind of way. As is the entire film, I adore the atmosphere of Goblet of Fire, and the musical score by Patrick Doyle, I believe, super underrated. There are some tracks in here that I absolutely love. The Yule Ball track, there's the track that plays called Harry and Winter, one of my absolute favourite pieces of Harry Potter score of the entire series right there. This is also the first Harry Potter film to explore forms of teen angst, because Harry and Ron have a falling out, and Hermione's kind of caught in the middle of it, and Hermione and Ron have a bit of a falling out later on as well. And the teen angst in here doesn't feel forced, doesn't feel cringy, you're not rolling your eyes, it all feels completely natural as per the characters, where they are in their lives. It's, you know, we all go through those phases as teenagers, and these characters are no different. It's just they're in a school of magic and wizardry. Goblet of Fire was re-released in the cinema last year for its 20th anniversary, and I went and watched it. And being in that cinema again, watching Goblet of Fire on the big screen again, was quite a surreal experience. It took me straight back to being a kid in 2005, watching it for the first time, seeing it in shops everywhere, seeing the poster everywhere. I remember some weird memory of seeing a Goblet of Fire calendar in a shop somewhere. Admittedly, nostalgia is a big part of why I love Goblet of Fire, but I actually do genuinely love the film itself. The music, the cinematography, the directing. I genuinely believe this to be the most underrated Harry Potter film, because I rarely see people express as much love for it as I have for it. And last but not least, number 1, my favourite Harry Potter film is, of course, the one I've not mentioned, The Prisoner of Azkaban. You want to talk about tone and atmosphere? Prisoner of Azkaban is like a wet dream in that regard. If I was to rank my all-time favourite films in terms of just pure tone and atmosphere, Prisoner of Azkaban would be a top 5, maybe even a top 3. This was the first Harry Potter film to get a new director. Alfonso Cuarón took over from Chris Columbus, and as a result, it's the first Potter film to have such a drastic change in tone, style, and direction. And I cannot just overwhelmingly praise the tone and atmosphere of this film enough. I think you can get the full flavour of this film just from the scene with the Dementor and the Hogwarts Express, where it's raining, it's dark, you got that slightly darker score from John Williams in the background, and it is just absolutely enthralling across the board. The direction, the production design, the cinematography, the sets, the costumes, the music, it is just, it's one of the all-time greatest fantasy films. But on top of all of that, the story is really, really good. It's got another great mystery at the centre, with Sirius Black, what's his motivations, what's his loyalties, Lupin's coming as a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, the best Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher Hogwarts ever had, the conclusion of the Shrieking Shack, and learning the backstory of how Harry's mum and dad were betrayed by Peter Pettigrew, leading to their deaths by Voldemort. Some really vital, important backstory information. And that moment at the end when Harry runs up and does Expecto Patronum on all the Dementors, and that heavenly angel music starts playing, is one of the top 3 moments of the entire franchise. Just epic stuff. Like I said, tonally and atmospherically, Prisoner of Azkaban is one of my all-time favourite films. I would definitely put this in my top 3 fantasy films of all time. And yeah, there's just nothing about it I really dislike. Everything in this film comes together. It's so well made and well crafted across the board, like I've already gushed about. And thus, Prisoner of Azkaban is my number one favourite Harry Potter film. Also, my Lego Nightbus might just be my favourite Lego vehicle. And that concludes my ranking of the Harry Potter film series. And because of that childhood attachment, I would say that this is probably my all-time favourite film franchise, definitely my favourite film universe of all time. So the obvious question for you lot is, what is your ranking of the Harry Potter film series? And have you read the books? How do you feel about the films as adaptations of the books? And are you looking forward to the Harry Potter TV show on HBO later this year? Whatever your thoughts are on all things Harry Potter, let me know. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Mischief managed.